Okay, so let's try this again. Hello folks, again this is G2 Verado. I'm a real estate agent in Phoenix, Arizona with Caldwell Banker Residential Real Estate. And today we're going to talk about solar leased panels. So here we go. Solar lease panels are becoming a nightmare for homeowners across the United States and particularly here in Arizona. We have pull my notes over here. We have a property listed right now for sale, $225,000 home. We have had about 8 offers on the property and lost 5 because the buyer could not qualify for his mortgage and the extra weight of the solar leased panel. Hello, Frank. The problem is that when a buyer applies for a loan, a home loan, he has to qualify for that loan based on his debt-to-income ratio. When he's buying a home with a solar lease already attached, the buyer has to be able to qualify for the mortgage payment that he's been approved for, plus the extra cost of the solar panel system. So here's an example, and this is exactly what we're dealing with right now. The house we've got listed is listed at $225,000. 5 buyers came along and qualified for a mortgage. Hello, Avita, Ricardo. Qualified for a qualified for a home mortgage that would purchase. Can't the previous owner take the system with them? Yes, the system can be moved, but if the seller is moving out of country, well, across the sea. In this case, our client is moving to Alaska. They're moving to Hawaii. So they're not going to be able to take that system with them to Hawaii. So yes, they could move it to another house, but it isn't quite that simple. It also has to, there's a hook in the solar system lease. It says yes, we'll move it to another house, but the house has to be oriented properly, the proper east-west direction orientation, north-south. It has to have the same square footage on top of it. It has to have a place to put the lease panel. So yeah, in the lease it says we'll move them, but it doesn't say as long as the house will fit the system. So the leases are really set up with a lot of inequity and a lot of gray area that's causing problems for homeowners. In our situation, the seller owns the house. They're making payments on their lease for the solar system. They're $89 a month. The buyer comes along, qualifies for a $225,000 mortgage, but does not qualify for that mortgage if he's going to load the debt ratio with an extra $89 a month, $90 a month. Hi, Mike. You're back again. Sorry, I jumped out and jumped back in. So here's the deal. In order for that buyer who qualified for the $125,000 mortgage, so where's the fine print getting a solar system? Good question. So here's the deal. The solar lease, and if you're looking at so many things rattling through my head right now. Let's answer your question. The fine print is very fine. It's actually not on the lease. The lease doesn't tell you that the property that you want to move the units to has to qualify for the movement. The lease doesn't tell you that if you're going to sell your home and have somebody assume the lease, that person assuming the lease has to be able to qualify for the mortgage on the home plus the lease. The lease doesn't tell you what the credit score is that the buyer of the home has to have to be able to assume the solar lease. All of these pieces are kept secret from the homeowner, from the home buyer when they get the lease. So these are very, very huge problems, great big problems. And hi, Money Boo Boo. When the homeowner was greeted by the salesperson at the front door, and that salesperson, hi, Short Gears, salesperson said, hey, I'll sell you a lease, I'll sell you a solar system, your payment on your utilities will drop tremendously, and it does. And all you need to do is, hello, Michael, all you need to do is find a buyer who will assume your lease when you move. That's cool. That sounds really great. What they don't tell you is as long as his lender will let him add an extra $90 to his debt load, as long as if you want to take the system with you, it fits the house you want to move it to. It also doesn't speak real clearly, the lease doesn't, to when they take the system off the house. If you look at some of these leases, the leases say they'll return the property to the state at which it is when the system is removed. The leases don't say we'll return your home, your roof, to you in the condition it was in before we put the lease on, where we drilled all the holes in your roof and put feet to hold the solar panels in place. All these pieces of information are not part of normal conversations. And while the consumer might be all giddy and excited about saving money on their utility bill, we don't live in our homes until we die anymore. Is Vizient Solar one of the companies you're referring to? I don't know that company, and most of the solar companies actually have leasing entities that work under their umbrella. Some of them actually outsource the leases. Something to think about. I have a solar lease. Dear God love you. If you have a solar lease, if anybody here is listening to this broadcast who has a solar lease, break out your lease and look for these things. Does the lease tell you that a person assuming the lease has to meet a set of standards set by the leasing company? I'm going to tell you it probably does. Does the lease articulate what those set of standards is? I'm going to tell you it probably doesn't. The only way you'll find those out is if you call the leasing company. Does the lease tell you, yes, you can move the equipment, but oh, by the way, the equipment has to fit on the place you want to move it to? It probably doesn't tell you that. Does the lease tell you that you can not pay off the lease in advance? It probably tells you that, but you never really read it. Does the lease tell you that you cannot buy the equipment out from the lease? It probably tells you that, but you never read it. We tend to get into these lease situations, solar systems, water softener systems, RO systems, other wonderful appendages to homes. But the salespeople do such a great job in selling the benefits of the product, we don't pay attention to the underlying mechanism that ties you to that property. In this case, a solar lease, and you're talking about 20 years at $90 a month for 20 years, and that's a graduated payment that goes up. We've lost 5 buyers that qualified to buy the house, had the credit scores to qualify to buy the lease, but when the lender looked at their debt-to-income ratio and added the weight of the lease payment to the weight of the mortgage payment and all their other debt, they no longer qualified to buy that house with that extra payment of the lease. So we lost the buyers. Now, fortunately, we've got another buyer coming on board. It looks like they're going to be able to get the job done. But that's 5 qualified buyers who wanted to buy that house but couldn't because the solar lease stood in their way. And that solar lease stood in their way because the lender could not grant them their mortgage. That is an expensive lease. There's no money down. Yes. The leases actually have. I think that I'm not real sure. I think the entry point on these are very minimal down, and the leases are sold and hyped with the benefit of the leasing system or the panel, and that's true. All of the savings that the system generates are actual facts. They do benefit the homeowner. Where they become a problem is if you're going to sell the house. If you're going to sell the house, you need to find that needle in a haystack buyer who will qualify for not only your home, but the weight of the lease payment. And think about this. The home you're buying is $225,000. In order to qualify to buy that house with a lease that is in its infancy, so let's say at $90 a month, you have to actually be able to afford a house that would cost $244,000 a month. Now, if you can buy a house for $20,000 more than the house you just looked at, that's really a cool house, but there are other really cool houses that are $20,000 more that you can afford, why in the world would you buy that other house for $220,000? You wouldn't. You'd end up buying the one for $240,000. The logic doesn't track, and the leasing salespeople that sell these leases to consumers under the guise that you can just get rid of this lease when you move on with your life. There's a lot of conversation that's missing when those lease agreements are signed by the homeowners. Please, 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 if you're looking at solar, buy it. Get into a system that sells you the leasing panels. If you're going to die in that house, maybe a lease system will work for you. If you're not going to die in that house and you have an idea of selling that house 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, somewhere before 20 when the lease expires, then maybe you don't want to look at a leased solar system. Now, there are other problems with the leasing, the leased solar panels regarding value added to the property, and we'll get that into another session. But I really wanted to take a moment to talk about this lease problem because this is becoming an incredibly difficult situation for real estate agents across the country, for homeowners across the country, and the elderly who are preyed upon by these salespeople who do not clearly articulate what the lease actually says. It doesn't explain the nuance of, oh, just move the lease to the system to another house. It doesn't explain the nuance of, oh, just find another buyer and we'll assign the lease to them. Doesn't explain all that, and we need to do a better job of helping consumers understand this. Listen, I'm G2 Verado. I'm a real estate agent here in Phoenix, Arizona. My wife and I have been doing this for nearly 30 years. I'm also the Director of Government Affairs for the Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals. You can always find me at airforcehomebuyer.info. You can also find us at goairforcehomes.info/PCS. Or you can find me at varep.net. That's VAREP.net. My wife is Lori Clindera, and we'd be happy to take your questions anytime. Our Twitter handle and my scope ID are exactly the same, at G2 Realtor. Listen, have a great day. Check in again. We'll talk more about solar panel leases and how value is added or not credited by various lending entities such as Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and VA. Talk to you soon. Have a great evening. Bye.